Imagine what it would be like if you could slip into someone else's skin, really understand their desires, their fears, and their goals. The past few months, and actually years, I've been focusing my attention on becoming the best version of myself that I can be, trying to influence more people, trying to have a positive impact on the world around me. And one of the things that helped me do that is understanding people more. I learned from Chris Voss from the book Never Split the Difference that everything you do, every interaction with other people is actually like a kind of negotiation where there's always something at stake. Both parties want something and it's about giving each other what the other person needs. And what Chris Voss actually taught me was that one should not aim for a compromise, as that can be seen as a lose-lose situation, but one should try to aim for a win-win. There are multiple reasons for that. First of all, the first win to oneself, like we want to get what we want, that goes without saying. But the second win, the win of the other person, is also very important for future interactions with that person. We want the other person to also be happy with that interaction so that they will come back in the future and we will have another prosperous and good collaboration in the future. So, in order to give the other person what they want, which maybe is also something that we secretly want, but we are not aware that we want this. So like we're trying to open up the discussion to learn as much as we can about different perspectives, different parts of reality, and then trying to serve that, make sure we get the best thing, something that we couldn't have gotten with just ourselves. In order to do that, we must understand what the other person truly wants. And this video is going to be completely about that, something that I've focused my attention on in the past few weeks and months, to understand what the other person wants. And I want to give certain techniques and sources that you can use in order to become better at this skill, to really crawl into someone else's skin. One question that I would like to pose at the beginning is try to think about what is the one thing, the one lesson that you've learned from this video that will have the most impact in your day-to-day life. So as I said, for me, the journey started when I started reading the book Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. He explains about the negotiation part and how you can use mirroring and open-ended how questions, calibrated questions, in order to get the other person to feel more comfortable and to share a bit more about what they really want. The whole negotiation business is about getting as much information as you can in order to make good offers and to also understand when to walk away. But that kind of way of thinking was very interesting to me, and I tried to implement these techniques, but it kept kind of lingering in my unconscious mind. There was not something really concrete that I could further build on, I thought. So for a couple of years now, since I read the book, I didn't really focus too much attention on it. But it was until a couple of weeks ago when I had a training where the information resurfaced. So the training that I'm following is about basically leadership development, and it's mostly about soft skills and these kind of topics as well, like how do you handle critical situations. And we practice with one specific technique, and that technique made me realize how important this skill is, and it became one of my key learning goals to gain this skill of crawling into someone else's skin and completely understanding what do they actually want. And this is even separate from the fact that whether or not I can or want to give that person whatever they want, it's more about me being able to step out of my own perspective and step into someone else's. So the technique that we learned was as follows. You write on a piece of paper a problem or a situation that you are facing in your day-to-day life that you would like to evaluate. Now you have your own view on that situation. So you take that piece of paper with the situation and you put it on the floor. And then you write down on a couple of post-its or other pieces of paper the names or the roles of the people who are involved in that situation that you are concerned with, and you put them around that problem somewhere where you seem fit. And by putting them down, you already create a very interesting dynamic of how these papers are with respect to each other. But the exercise is just starting. So you can think from your own perspective, how would I look at this problem? But in the second round, what you would do is step onto the piece of paper of the person other than yourself. And you start by closing your eyes and trying to take in everything you can imagine about that person. So it doesn't have to be everything you know. It can be small cues or things that you maybe project, or maybe you get a feeling from your imagination, and this is how they live. Like imagine where they wake up in their bed in the morning, what kind of breakfast they have, how they go to work. When they arrive at work, what do they see? You try to imagine yourself crawling into the skin of that person, and only once you feel like, now I have a sense of what it is to be this person, you open your eyes and you look at the problem and you look at the people around you and you try to see what they see. So not from Tim's perspective, but from me being manager. Me being manager looking at the problem. Me being the manager looking at Tim, saying, okay, how does he relate to me? What do I want from him? How would I like him to approach me? How would I like him to solve the problem? How would I contribute to solving the problem? And that is just a really, really interesting and funny technique that does two things actually. So it helps you to step outside of your own perspective, and it helps you to step into someone else's and see that the way that people see the problem is very different, but also the way that people see other people, including yourself, is very different. So I learned that my manager might see me in a certain way, and another colleague might see me in, again, another way. That makes the whole situation way more complex, but also way more insightful. With all these variables, you have more room to find a real solution. Things are not as static as they may seem from the beginning. So after this training, I already realized, okay, this is something that I want to spend more time on. I want to learn more about it. And then I realized that actually a couple of years ago as well, I was following John Vervaekes, who is an amazing professor, lecturer, YouTuber as well. And he has a YouTube series called After Socrates, where he basically follows the practices of Socrates and other thinkers like him. But in one of his episodes, he's explaining the difference between imaginary and imaginal. And imaginary is the thing that you come up with, like a dream scenario that is fictional in your mind. And imaginary is actually the thing that's between the fictional and the reality, between a dream and the material world. And a very easy example of explaining what imaginal is if you think of being a kid. Think about yourself being a 5-year-old kid playing outside. You find a stick, you grab it. Now this stick is a sword. And you are not anymore a kid, but you are a warrior, and you are fighting with this sword. You start to play and you start to interact with other kids as if you are a warrior. And this is exactly what imaginal is. You are taking something imaginary, something that has been given power by your brain, by your imagination, by your focus, and you're giving that your body as a vessel, basically. You're trying to inherit it. You're trying to be possessed by that specific concept, by that entity. In the kid's example, the kid is being possessed by a brave warrior in the most positive sense. And in a similar way, for instance, Aboriginal hunters would, and probably still do, when they are tracking an animal, at a certain point they lose the track and they would try to get possessed by the spirit of that animal. They try to imagine what it would be like to be this animal. They start walking in the way that the animal would, and then they try to find the most likely path that that animal took. This is a very common hunting technique in these kind of societies. And that exact same technique, the imaginal, the thing that the kid is using, the thing that the ancient hunter-gatherers are using, that is the same technique that we can use in our day-to-day office lives. We can imagine what it is like to be our manager or our colleague, and how we can best approach these different kind of interests. And after I made these connections between the technique that I learned, the book that I read years ago, and also the videos from John Vervaekes, I realized that this is really a topic that is valuable to share and valuable to continue to investigate. So, as I said, it is still one of my main learning goals for the coming year, to get really good at crawling into other people's skin. The things that I already learned are related to how rigid my own perspective and perception is if I only look at it from my frame of mind. But I have actually the ability, although it does cost effort and time, to step out of that and look at it from a different angle. Not only do I learn what other people might think, but I also learn that what I think that I am is very different, and what my manager thinks or my spouse might think about myself can vary drastically. So that also gives me a better understanding of who I am, what I am and what I am not, which again can be a great source for shadow work or journaling if you want to go into that. So if you are also interested in this topic and you want to learn more, I have 3 things that I can advise you to do. One thing is start all of your meetings or interactions with people with the question in mind: what does this person actually really want? What do they desire and what do they fear? So try to put yourself already in a frame of mind, like questioning about that person. What's in it for them? So not what do I want to get out of this situation? Maybe you run into someone at the coffee machine and you're like, I just want to get out, I want to work. No, try to be open and think, okay, what does this person want from me in this moment? Do they need something from me? Or do they just want to feel acknowledged? Or do they want to get an answer? Or do they want to laugh, have a bit of social connection? What do they actually want? Second, I can highly recommend to watch the video of John Vervaekes. Actually, watch all his videos if you have time. But this one specific, I will link it down below because it has a very clear explanation of the imaginary and imaginal, way better than I probably can. So please go to that video and have a look. And the third would be to try the technique that I laid out before. So write down a situation or a problem, put it on the floor, put the people involved around it, and take a couple of minutes, maybe just put a timer or do it together with someone who can guide you through it, to take 5 minutes per person, per perspective, and go through that and take notes while you do it. Make it a kind of meditative practice so you're not getting distracted while you do it. Close your eyes. You have a couple of questions in mind. What did this person eat this morning? How did they get to work? Do they have a dog? Do they have a wife? Etc. Until you feel like, now I am really in the spirit of what this person is doing. And then you look at the problem and the insights that you have, you can take down, like you can take notes and write them down immediately. So I think doing these 3 things is a nice starting point to really dive deep into this topic. There's one more thing that I didn't mention that you can also gain from this technique, and that's not only understanding yourself or others, but you can also use it in a very functional way. This technique, using the imaginal to get possessed by certain ideas or personalities, can also be used like the young boy becoming a warrior. You can become someone who is great at presenting, someone who is full of confidence, someone who is extremely focused. You can imagine a real life person, someone you know, some celebrity, or even just the archetype of warrior or wise man, whatever you feel like you have enough affinity with to let that spirit inhabit you. And you can do this practice. Before a presentation, think about what would person XYZ do before a presentation, or once they get up the stage, how would they look at people, what would they think, what would they feel, and try to make that your own and then go out there and do it. This is a technique that I have started experimenting with, and I think it's a very interesting one. So let me know if you try these things, how that works for you. Circling back to the question that I asked in the beginning, what is the one thing that you took away from this video, one question that has been answered, or one tip that you can put into practice in your day-to-day life that will have the most impact? I am sincerely interested in the answer to that question, but I also want to give it a bit of context. I watched a video, which was a podcast of Andrew Huberman a couple of weeks back, where he had a guest, which was he used to be a world champion chess player, who also wrote the book The Art of Learning, and he explained this concept of the MIQ, the most important question, which you can actually kind of prompt yourself at the beginning or the end of an activity, or after you, at the end of work, and then you go home, and then at the beginning of your next workday, you look at this MIQ, and you will find that your unconscious mind has been able to answer that question without you even thinking about it consciously. So you're using your unconscious processing power to come up with an answer that can help you move along. And I wanted to experiment with that, and that's why I want to start and end my videos with this MIQ, the most important question, and I want you to give me the answer to this question. What is the most important piece of information that you have learned in this video that you think you can implement in your day-to-day life? If you have an answer to that question, please drop it in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video, and don't forget to have a great day.